After feeding a homeless woman, I suddenly heard a chilling warning from her. The moment your husband leaves for work, don't touch the leaves in the yard. I just shrugged, thinking it was the rambling of someone who'd spent too many nights on cold pavement, her mind fractured by hardship. But something in her crystalline blue eyes made me nod, made me promise. And when I stepped onto the porch the next morning, coffee mug warm in my hands, I looked down at the innocent carpet of autumn leaves covering my lawn and saw it. A thin, deliberate line of disturbance running from the oak tree straight to my garden bed, where something had been buried in the dark while I slept, trusting the man I'd married. 6 months earlier, my life had the rhythm of comfortable predictability. I was Sarah Mitchell, 34 years old, working as a senior marketing coordinator at a mid-sized tech firm in Seattle. My days were filled with campaign strategies, client presentations, budget spreadsheets, and the satisfying click of sending off another successful project. I made decent money, not executive level, but enough to live comfortably, save for retirement, and occasionally splurge on concert tickets or a weekend trip to the coast. Marcus and I had been married for 3 years, together for 6. We'd met at a mutual friend's housewarming party, both of us awkwardly holding beers in the kitchen, while everyone else mingled in the living room. He was a civil engineer for a construction firm, quiet and analytical, with dark, curly hair and a crooked smile that only appeared when he was genuinely amused. We bonded over our shared discomfort at social gatherings and our mutual love of old science fiction novels. Our courtship was slow and steady. Weekend hikes in the Cascades, lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and crossword puzzles, comfortable silences that didn't need filling. When he proposed on a rainy evening in our apartment, no grand gesture, just a quiet quote, I said yes without hesitation. We bought a house in Maple Valley, a suburb 40 minutes south of the city, a charming craftsman bungalow with original hardwood floors, a brick fireplace, and a huge backyard dominated by an ancient oak tree that dropped leaves like confetti every October. The house needed work. The kitchen was stuck in the 90s, the bathroom tiles were cracked, the roof would need replacing in a few years, but it was ours. We had plans: renovate the kitchen next summer, maybe convert the basement into an office, plant a vegetable garden in the spring. Marcus's mother, Linda, lived 2 hours away in Spokane. She was a retired real estate agent, 61 years old, with the kind of personality that filled every room she entered. Loud, opinionated, generous with advice nobody asked for. She'd been widowed 5 years earlier when Marcus's father died of a sudden heart attack. And since then, she'd become increasingly involved in her son's life, calling 3 times a week, visiting once a month, offering her opinion on everything from our furniture choices to my career. I tolerated Linda because I loved Marcus, and family was important. She wasn't cruel, just exhausting. She had a way of phrasing criticism as concern, quote 2 or quote 3. The real friction started about a year into our marriage. Linda began having what she called underscore, quote _4_. Her retirement savings weren't stretching as far as she'd hoped. Property taxes on her house kept increasing. Medical bills from a minor surgery piled up. She needed help, and Marcus, being her only child, felt obligated to provide it. At first, it was reasonable. $500 here, $1,000 there, helping cover unexpected expenses. I didn't object. Family helps family. But the requests became more frequent, the amounts larger, the emergencies less convincing. By our second anniversary, Marcus was sending his mother nearly $2,000 a month. She's on a fixed income, he'd explain when I gently raised concerns. Quote, 6, quote, 7. I'd reply carefully, I'm saying maybe we should look at her actual budget, help her find ways to cut costs, make sure this is sustainable. She's my mother, Sarah. I'm not going to audit her like she's some kind of financial criminal. The conversation would end there. a wall of guilt and obligation that I couldn't scale without seeming heartless. Then Linda started having, quote, 10 that required Marcus to drop everything and drive to Spokane. A leak in the basement that turned out to be a dripping faucet. A strange noise in the attic that was just squirrels. A health scare that was indigestion. Each time, Marcus would take a day off work, make the 4-hour round trip, and return home exhausted and frustrated but unwilling to acknowledge that his mother might be manufacturing crises for attention. 6 months ago, everything escalated. Linda announced she wanted to move closer to us. Her house in Spokane was, quote, 11 now that she was getting older. She'd found a lovely condo in Maple Valley, coincidentally just 10 minutes from our house, and could we help with the down payment? The down payment was $40,000. Marcus brought this up over dinner one evening, his tone carefully casual, like he was suggesting we try a new restaurant, not deplete a significant portion of our savings. Mom, found a great place. 2 bedrooms, ground floor, nice community. She'd be so much closer, wouldn't have to make those long drives, and she needs help with the down payment. I was thinking we could contribute maybe $40,000 from our savings. I set down my fork. Marcus, that's more than half our emergency fund. I know. But it's an investment in her future. She's getting older. What if something happens and she's 2 hours away? Then we could visit more often. Or she could look for something cheaper. There are assisted living facilities. She's 61, not 90. She doesn't need assisted living. I didn't mean that kind. I meant active adult communities, places with amenities and activities, which cost more than the condo she found. Sarah, she's my mother. She raised me alone after Dad died when I was 15. I owe her everything. There it was. The argument I couldn't counter. How do you tell your spouse that his mother's past sacrifices don't entitle her to unlimited access to your bank account without sounding cruel? We argued for 3 days. I suggested compromises. A smaller contribution, a loan instead of a gift, waiting 6 months to see if we could save more. Marcus grew increasingly cold, sleeping on the couch, barely speaking to me except in clipped sentences. Finally, worn down by his silence and my own guilt about being, quote, 19, I agreed. We transferred $40,000 to Linda's account. She bought the condo. And true to her word, she moved to Maple Valley, 10 minutes from our house, close enough to drop by whenever she wanted, which turned out to be constantly. Linda would show up unannounced on weekday evenings, staying for dinner, monopolizing Marcus's attention for hours. She'd call him at work with minor problems. Her internet wasn't working, she couldn't figure out her new TV remote. She'd seen a suspicious person in the parking lot and felt unsafe. Marcus would leave work early to help her, coming home after I'd already eaten dinner alone. Weekend plans were constantly interrupted. We'd schedule a hike or a movie, and Linda would call with some urgent need. Marcus would apologize, cancel our plans, and spend the day with his mother instead. When I pointed out the pattern, he accused me of being jealous of his relationship with his mum. But time only made it worse. Linda had a key to our house. Marcus had given it to her, and she'd let herself in when we weren't home. I'd come back from work to find she'd reorganized my kitchen cabinets or done our laundry, folding my underwear and putting everything in the wrong drawers. When I asked Marcus to get the key back, he looked at me like I'd suggested we throw his mother off a cliff. She's trying to help. Why are you so ungrateful? I'm not ungrateful. I'm uncomfortable with someone entering our home without permission. It's not someone. It's my mother. The final straw came 3 months ago. I'd inherited money from my grandmother, $50,000 left to me specifically in her will with a note that said, quote, 27. My grandmother had known me, really known me, and she'd wanted me to have something of my own. I'd been planning to use the money to finally renovate our kitchen. New cabinets, modern appliances, maybe extend the counter space. It was something I'd been dreaming about since we bought the house, something that would make our daily lives better. I mentioned this plan at Sunday dinner at Linda's condo. Big, Mistake. Underscore quote. Underscore 28 underscore. Linda's eyebrows shot up. How wonderful! You know, my kitchen could really use some updates too. These builder-grade cabinets are just awful. And the appliances are so old. Sarah, would you consider helping me with mine too? Maybe we could hire the same contractor, get a bulk discount. Linda, this money was left to me specifically. It's for our house. Oh. Her face fell dramatically. Wounded. I see. Well, of course, you should do what you want with your inheritance. I just thought, since Marcus helped me with the down payment, maybe you'd want to. But no, you're absolutely right. It's your money. The guilt trip worked. Marcus was quiet the whole drive home, and that night in bed he said, "Would it really be so terrible to help my mum with her kitchen too? She's right that we got a good deal on her condo because she acted fast. The least we could do is make sure she's comfortable there." Marcus, that's my inheritance. My grandmother left it to me. And I'm your husband. Doesn't that mean we share things? Or are you keeping score of whose money is whose? We fought for a week. He used every weapon in his arsenal. I was selfish, materialistic, holding grudges against his mother for petty reasons. He slept on the couch again. Stopped kissing me goodbye in the morning. Came home late without explanation. I held firm longer this time. 2 weeks of Cold War. But eventually, exhausted and lonely in my own marriage, I compromised. We'd split the inheritance, $25,000 for our kitchen, $25,000 for Linda's. It felt like a betrayal of my grandmother's wishes, but I told myself it was the price of peace. The renovations were scheduled to start in both kitchens simultaneously. Linda insisted on the same contractor to ensure quote 36, though her kitchen got all the premium finishes, while ours got the budget options because quote 37. That's when things got strange. The contractor, a man named Derek, who came recommended by Linda, required a 50% deposit up front, $25,000, split between both projects. Marcus handled the payment since he'd been coordinating with Derek. The work was supposed to start in 2 weeks, but the night before the deposit was due, I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. Maybe it was intuition, maybe just the accumulated weight of 3 years of watching my boundaries erode and my savings drain away. At 2 a.m, I got up, went to Marcus's home office, and opened his laptop. I wasn't looking for anything specific. Maybe just wanted to see the contract with the contractor, confirm the payment schedule. But when I opened his email, I saw a draft saved in his outbox. Not sent, just sitting there. The subject line, timeline for liquidation. The email was addressed to Derek, but Derek's email address wasn't a contractor's business email. It was a generic Gmail account. And the message made my blood run cold. Quote, 39. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the laptop. The words rearranged themselves in my mind, forming a picture so ugly I wanted to vomit. Marcus wasn't helping his mother. He was conspiring with her and this contractor to drain my inheritance, probably planning something with our house too. The property transfer documentation. Our house was in both names, but with my inheritance in the joint account and my signature on renovation contracts, they were setting up some kind of fraud. I took screenshots, forwarded the email to myself, checked the bank account and saw that yes, the $25,000 had been transferred out yesterday. Searched through more emails and found months of correspondence between Marcus and his mother, planning this from the moment my grandmother had died. "She's too trusting," Linda had written. "Just keep her focused on the kitchen renovation, and I'll handle the legal paperwork. Derek can forge her signature on the equity documents. He's done it before." My husband, the man I'd married, who I'd trusted with my life, my home, my future, was planning to forge my signature to steal equity from our house. He'd been planning this with his mother for months. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark office. and felt something inside me turn to ice. The next morning, I acted normal, made coffee, kissed Marcus goodbye as he left for work, waved to him from the doorway. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, I grabbed my phone and called a lawyer. Then, I called my bank and froze the joint account. Then, I changed all my passwords, email, bank accounts, credit cards, everything. By noon, I had an appointment with a divorce attorney scheduled for the following day, and a forensic accountant who specialised in financial fraud cases. And that evening, I went for a walk in my neighbourhood to clear my head, process everything, figure out my next steps. That's when I saw her, the homeless woman. She was sitting on the curb 3 houses down from mine, surrounded by plastic bags filled with what looked like her entire life. I'd seen homeless people in Seattle, of course, but rarely in our suburban neighbourhood. She looked about 60, with matted grey hair and a weathered face, wearing layers of mismatched clothes despite the mild October weather. Something about her stillness drew me over. Maybe I needed to do something good, something simple and kind, in a world that suddenly felt full of betrayal. Quote, 43, I said gently. Quote, 44. She looked up, and her eyes were startling, bright blue, clear, almost luminous in her weathered face. She studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling feeling she was seeing more than just my face. Quote 45, she said, not a question, a statement. Quote 46, she nodded slowly. Quote 47. The observation was so accurate it made me step back, but I recovered. Quote 48, I didn't wait for an answer. Went back to my house, made 2 turkey sandwiches, filled a thermos with hot soup, grabbed an old blanket from the linen closet. When I returned, she accepted everything with a gracious nod, like a queen receiving tribute. I sat on the curb a few feet away, giving her space but keeping her company. She ate slowly, methodically, and we didn't speak for several minutes. Then she set down the thermos and turned to me. Quote, 49, my heart skipped. Quote, 50, quote, 51. She grabbed my hand suddenly, her grip surprisingly strong. Quote, 52. I wanted to laugh, to chalk this up to mental illness or too many nights without shelter. But those blue eyes held mine with such intensity, such urgency, that I found myself nodding. Quote, 53, she released my hand. Quote, 54. She finished her meal in silence, thanked me, and walked away into the evening darkness. I watched her go, confused and unnerved. That night, Marcus came home late, said he'd been at his mother's, helping her with some paperwork. He kissed my forehead, asked how my day was, and I smiled and said, quote, 55, and hated how easily the lie came. We went through our evening routine like actors in a play. Dinner, television, bed. He fell asleep quickly, snoring softly beside me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the homeless woman's warning. Don't touch the leaves. Why? What could possibly be hidden in fallen leaves? Morning came. Marcus's alarm went off at 6:30. He showered, dressed, grabbed his travel mug of coffee. Kissed my forehead again, that same casual gesture that used to mean affection but now felt like performance. Long day today, he said. Meeting with a new client in Tacoma, might not be back until 8 or 9. Okay, drive safe. I watched from the bedroom window as he drove away. Then I made my own coffee, stood at the kitchen window and stared at the backyard. The oak tree had been dropping leaves for weeks. The lawn was covered in a thick blanket of rust and gold, beautiful and completely ordinary. I'd been planning to rake them this weekend, bag them for yard waste pickup. But the homeless woman's warning echoed in my mind. I grabbed my coffee mug, walked to the back door, stepped onto the porch. The morning air was crisp, carrying the smell of wet earth and wood smoke from someone's fireplace. I stood at the top of the porch steps, looking down at the yard. And then I saw it, a line, thin, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. A slight discoloration in the leaves, a pattern that didn't match the random scatter of natural fall. It ran from the base of the oak tree, across the lawn, and disappeared into the raised garden bed along the left side of the yard, the bed where I'd planted tulip bulbs just last week. My hands started shaking. Coffee sloshed over the rim of my mug. I descended the porch steps slowly, circling around to approach the garden bed from the side rather than walking directly through the leaves. The closer I got, the more obvious the pattern became. Someone had walked this path recently, disturbed the leaves, then tried to cover their tracks by scattering more leaves on top. But they'd done it hastily, imperfectly. I knelt at the edge of the garden bed, my heart hammering. The tulip bulbs I'd planted in neat rows had been pushed aside, the soil disturbed. Recently, within the last day or two. With trembling hands, I brushed away the top layer of leaves. Plastic, heavy-duty clear plastic sheeting, the kind contractors use. And, beneath the plastic, freshly turned earth that I definitely hadn't turned. Someone had dug up my garden bed and tried to hide it. I pulled back more plastic, started digging with my bare hands. 6 inches down, my fingers hit something solid. Metal. Cold. I cleared more dirt, and a box emerged. Grey, fireproof, about the size of a large shoebox. The kind you'd keep important documents in. I pulled it free, my whole body shaking now. The box wasn't locked. I flipped the latches and opened the lid. Cash. Bundles and bundles of $100 bills, bound with rubber bands. I didn't count, but even at a glance it was clearly tens of thousands of dollars. Beneath the cash, documents. I pulled them out with dirty hands, unfolded them, property deed transfers, with my signature. Except I'd never signed these documents, never even seen them. The signatures were good, someone had practiced copying my handwriting, but they weren't mine. Beneath those, more papers. A quitclaim deed removing my name from our house title. Loan documents in my name for equity withdrawal, $150,000. All of it signed in a forgery of my handwriting. And at the bottom of the box, a burner phone. I picked it up, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. Pressed the power button. It lit up immediately. Fully charged, I opened the text messages. The most recent conversation made my vision blur. Marcus, quote, 59, unknown, quote, 60. Marcus, quote, 61. Unknown, quote, 62. Marcus, quote, 63. I scrolled up, reading weeks of messages. Plans, timelines, details about forging documents, and draining accounts and how to, quote, 64, and me if I got suspicious. The unknown number was identified in the contacts as underscore, quote, underscore 65 underscore Derek, the fake contractor, and then another contact, underscore underscore quote underscore 66 underscore mum. I opened that conversation. Linda, underscore quote, underscore 67, underscore Marcus, underscore quote, underscore 68, underscore Linda, underscore quote, underscore 69, underscore Marcus, underscore quote, underscore 70, underscore Linda, underscore quote, underscore 71, underscore. I closed the phone. Sat back on my heels in the dirt, surrounded by forged documents and evidence of a conspiracy that had been planned for months, maybe years, since before my grandmother died, since before I got the inheritance. They'd been grooming me, isolating me, making me financially dependent by constantly asking for money, then making me feel guilty for saying no, creating a pattern where I always gave in eventually, where Marcus always got his way, training me to be compliant, and when my grandmother left me that money, they'd seen their opportunity. The renovation was never real. Derek was probably a friend of Marcus's, maybe someone with experience in forgery. The whole plan was to drain my inheritance, forge documents to steal equity from our house, and then what? Divorce me and leave me with nothing, frame me for some kind of fraud? I didn't know, but I knew enough. I took photos of everything, every document, every text message, every bundle of cash. Then I called my lawyer. Quote, 72. The lawyer arrived within 40 minutes, bringing with her 2 police detectives. I sat on my back porch, still covered in dirt, the fireproof box open on the table, like Pandora's box, finally revealing all its horrors. Detective Chen, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a kind face, photographed everything while her partner, Detective Morrison, took my statement. Walk me through this again, Morrison said, pen poised over his notebook. A homeless woman warned you not to touch the leaves. I know how it sounds, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But yes, last night I gave her food and she grabbed my hand and told me specifically, when my husband leaves for work, don't touch the leaves in the yard. I thought she was confused. Maybe mentally ill, but I promised anyway. And you have no idea who she was? None. I'd never seen her before. She was gone before I could ask her name or how she knew. Detective Chen looked up from photographing the documents. Mrs. Mitchell, this woman may have witnessed your husband burying this box. She may have been watching your house, seen something suspicious. We need to find her. I've been looking for her all day in my mind. I admitted, but I don't know where she went. My lawyer, Patricia Hartwell, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialised in divorce and fraud cases, was already building our strategy. We file an emergency restraining order immediately, freeze all joint accounts, file criminal charges for identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery, and we get you out of this house today. This is my house, I said quietly. It's also a crime scene now, and it's not safe. If your husband realises you found this, if his mother realises, Sarah, these people have been planning to rob you blind for months, maybe longer, they're not going to take discovery well. She was right. I packed a bag while the detectives processed the scene, taking photos, bagging evidence, documenting everything. I called my boss and took emergency leave. Called my best friend Rachel and asked if I could stay with her for a few days. She asked no questions, just said, "Come now." By 3 that afternoon, I was at Rachel's apartment with a police escort, a restraining order being processed, and criminal charges filed. My joint bank accounts were frozen. My lawyer had copies of everything from the box, the phone, the forged documents. Marcus tried to call me 17 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. At 5:30, 2 detectives went to his office to arrest him. He called out me from the police station, 1 call allowed, and I listened to his voice on my voicemail later. "Sarah, what the hell is going on? The police arrested me at work. They're talking about fraud and forgery. This is insane. Call me back. We need to talk. This is obviously some kind of misunderstanding. Sarah, please, I love you. Call me." I deleted the message. Linda was arrested at her condo that evening. Derek, whose real name was Derek Paulson and who had a record for forgery and fraud in 2 other states, was picked up at a motel in Tacoma. The next 72 hours were a blur of police interviews, lawyer meetings, and paperwork. The forensic accountant traced money transfers going back 18 months. Marcus had been siphoning money from our accounts in small amounts, hoping I wouldn't notice. The $40,000 for Linda's condo down payment. She'd never needed it. Her retirement was perfectly adequate. The money had gone into an offshore account Marcus had opened in his name only. The contractor Derek was real, but the renovation was fake. They'd planned to take my deposit, claim the work was done, show me fabricated invoices, then pocket the money. By the time I realised nothing had been built, the funds would be gone, and the paperwork would show I'd authorised everything. The forged documents in the box were the final phase, transferring ownership of our house entirely to Marcus, taking out a massive equity loan in my name, and then either divorcing me or, the detective suggested darkly, potentially framing me for financial crimes so I'd be too busy defending myself to realise I'd been robbed. Quote, 87. Detective Chen told me on day 3. Quote, 88, I thought about the early days. How Marcus had always been interested in my finances, what I earned, what I'd saved, what my family's situation was, how he'd encouraged me to put money in joint accounts for transparency, how Linda had always asked pointed questions about my inheritance prospects, my grandmother's health, my parents' assets. They'd been grooming me from the beginning. The trial took 6 months. Marcus tried to claim the box wasn't his, that someone was framing him, but the burner phone had his fingerprints. The text messages matched his writing style and contained information only he would know. The forged signatures, when analysed by experts, matched practice sheets found in his home office. Linda tried to play the victim. She was just a mother helping her son. She didn't know anything about fraud. She thought everything was legal. But the text messages showed she'd been the mastermind, coaching Marcus on manipulation tactics, providing legal documents her real estate background had taught her about. Derek took a plea deal and testified against both of them. Marcus got 8 years, Linda got 6. Derek got 3, with credit for cooperation. I got my inheritance back, what was left of it after legal fees. Got the house, though I sold it immediately. Couldn't live there anymore, not with the memory of that garden bed and what had been buried beneath my tulip bulbs. But there was one mystery that remained: the homeless woman. I looked for her obsessively those first weeks, drove through the neighbourhood, checked with shelters, asked other unhoused people if they'd seen her. Nobody had. She'd appeared, warned me, and vanished like she'd never existed. A year after everything settled, I was volunteering at a women's shelter downtown, trying to give back, trying to make sense of everything. An older woman came in for dinner. Not the same woman, but similar age, weathered face, careful eyes. I served her soup and sat with her while she ate. We talked about nothing important, and then I asked, quote, 90, she looked at me with ancient, knowing eyes. Quote, 91, quote, 92. She smiled. Gaps in her teeth. Quote, 93. I thought about this as I walked home that night to my new apartment. Smaller and simpler, but truly mine. I thought about how close I'd come to losing everything. Not just money and property, but my sense of reality, my ability to trust, my future. I thought about a woman with blue eyes who'd seen my husband burying evidence of betrayal and had cared enough to warn a stranger. I never found her, never learnt her name or her story. But every year on the anniversary of that October morning, I make sandwiches and thermoses of soup and drive through the neighbourhoods where invisible people live on visible streets, and I leave them with notes that say, quote, 9-4. Because sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected sources. Sometimes angels wear tattered clothes and carry their lives in plastic bags. Sometimes the people we dismiss as crazy street people are the only ones sane enough to see the truth. I'm remarried now to a good man who showed me his bank statements on our 3rd date and insisted on couples therapy before we even talked about engagement. We have a small house with a garden, but no oak tree. I plant flowers every spring, and I never, ever bury anything in the beds. And if I see someone sitting on a curb who looks like they need a meal and some kindness, I stop. Every single time. Because I owe my life to a woman who stopped for me when I needed it most, even though I didn't know it yet. The truth was hiding in plain sight, beneath a carpet of autumn leaves. I just needed someone to tell me where to look.